People will say to me over and over and over again, I understand what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense. And I, of course, am operating at a much higher level than all of those people around me. And the people who really need to hear this message are not here today. They're back home watching a football game or whatever it is that they're doing. But they obviously wouldn't even come to this because I'm at such a much higher spiritual level. But I'm in the energy field of people who are always bringing me down. They're cruel, they're nasty, they're inconsiderate, they're not compassionate, they're vicious, they're hateful, they're any number of things that I don't want or can't tolerate in my life. And they bring me down. You've heard it, you've said it. They bring me down. My husband doesn't understand me. My boss doesn't get it. The people around me don't get it. It's a lousy, hateful world out there. There's a lot of people out there who are mean. There are a lot of people who are represented by those people that we quote call our enemies and so on. And I'm in that energy field and I can't help but being brought down. And I always ask myself, and I respond to that with imagine how Jesus would respond to such an observation. Like, I don't want to be over there with all of those thieves. You know, I can't go over there. I just can't be around them because they just bring me down. And you laugh because it's too absurd. Those prostitutes over there, they're just filthy. Those are just people that, they bring me down, so I stay away from them. I don't want to be around them. That wasn't his way. And I suggest to you that the reason that people with lower energies bring you down is not because it is them that are bringing you down, but it is because you join them in responding to them with the same energy that you despise. So if someone hates you and you hate them for hating you, you have responded to force with a counterforce. Anything above 200 is power. It's empowerment. Anything below 200 is force. If you get angry at somebody for being angry at you, if you get upset with somebody who is upsetting, if you get hateful towards someone who is acting hateful towards you, in your thoughts or in your actions, that is what it is that is bringing you down. But if you learn something else, something that St. Francis taught us in this prayer of St. Francis, this prayer isn't just a Catholic prayer. The prayer of Francesco is an 800-year-old technology for spiritual problem solving. Indeed, there is a spiritual solution to every problem. And energy moves from slow to high and low to fast, or reverse that, slow to fast and low to high. And that the lowest energies are the energies of the world of the physical. This hand looks like a solid mass, but if you look at it under a microscope, you know that it's not a solid mass. It's nothing but a bunch of molecules and atoms and subatomic particles all moving about. You know that. You know that inside there, despite what your eyes tell you, that inside here there is nothing but energy. And I've said a lot of things, and if there was an audiologist out there who was going to give you the energy report of the sound that was in this room, and all of an iridologist who was going to give you a report on all of the light in this room, you would discover that there are no problems in anything that was said or anything that you have seen. There are no problems in it. All they would do is show you, well, here's the energy. It would be a big scroll. They'd pull it out on an oscilloscope, and it would go like this, and then he said this, and then he said this, and you'd say, well, wait a minute, I thought maybe I heard him swear once, and that really kind of upset me. That was really a problem. And they'd say, no, can't find it in here. No, it's not in the report. The report just shows energy, but I didn't like that. Well, it's not in the report, because energy has no problems. It's only when we take it in and process it that it becomes a problem for us. There's no problems out there. And every problem that we have is located back here in this lowest energy field of all, the energy of the solid. And then we move up from the energy of light to the energy of sound, or of thoughts. And we actually think faster than light. And every thought that we have, as I've talked about in Power versus Force, has an energy component to it. And the higher the thought, as you move up towards love and peace and what I call intention, you change the impact that it has on everything in your life. Not just on everything in your body, but your life as well. And everyone that you impact. Some will feel better for being in your presence, some will feel worse. And the most astonishing piece of research, let me see if I brought it with me, is in the eye of the eye. This is one of the things that Hawkins concludes. One individual who calibrates at 700, if we had one individual calibrating at 700 on this planet, they would counterbalance the negativity of 70 million individuals who calibrate below 200. One person at 700 can counterbalance 70 million individuals who are at force or below. Imagine if there weren't people, enough people, who were moving the energy level of all of humanity with whom we are all connected. If we didn't have these people and this energy and this music and these books and these words and even events such as this going out across the world on the internet and so on, if we didn't have this and we moved our collective consciousness to a place where we didn't have enough people above the 200 range, the collective negativity of the people who live at this energy level would self-destruct the entire human race. That's for you to know how important and significant it is for you to live at these higher levels. And what did Francesco, and when I wrote Spiritual Solution to Every Problem, this photograph, which calibrates just a little bit under 600, which means that carrying the energy, if you look at the last 3 books of mine that have been written, this one, A Spiritual Solution to Every Problem, the 10 Secrets book, and the Getting in the Gap, notice the design, notice the feel, notice the photos, notice the drawings, notice the way that it feels in your hand, because everything has an energy, and we can design books, and we can design to understand. When Linda held the CD next to her of Sky's Music, and then she held the aspartame, one of them made her go strong and one of them made her go weak. Everything has an energy. And when Nisargadatta said to me, you don't have to read this book, he said, this was in 1982, he said, just carry it with you. It was called I Am That. Just carry it with you, and the energy from the words that you carry with you will impact those around you. I said, this is just a crazy old fart. What could he be talking about? How could, and some of you are probably thinking that about me today. How could a person say that just carrying something around could impact? And then I began to see the research, and Power versus Force came into my life, and Dr. Hawkins, and I began to see that I can make an impact and a difference just simply by the things that I carry around with me, what I wear, how I speak, what I listen to. I can make, and I can carry something around. This photograph was taken in Assisi after I carried a young man named John Grable up the steps of this castle, and he had muscular dystrophy, and we were going up the steps, and suddenly as I had him, he said I can't go any further because he walked like this. He had these huge braces, 20-pound braces on his legs, and he had to do this in order to get up each step. And then he had to take this one and go up the step. But this had a circular staircase in it, and it started to narrow, and he couldn't get his leg out any further. He could only go like this far. And he said, Wayne, he said, I can't go up any higher. I can't. And there was a line of people below us. And I said, John, all you have to do is put your arms around my back, and I'll carry you up the steps. And he weighed about 200 and some pounds with his braces. 6'1" man, 22 years old. And he got on my back, and I started carrying him up the steps, and then I remembered a couple of things. First, I remembered that I was 60 years old. And the second thing I had forgotten was that I had had a very serious knee injury. and I had been told that it was pretty seriously injured. I might even have to have surgery on it, possibility of replacement, all of that kind of stuff. And I couldn't even play tennis or run without a brace on it for the previous several years. And as I got about 4 or 5 steps up up that castle, suddenly my leg just started to buckle. And I realized that we were going to collapse, and I could see the headlines in the Assisi Daily News. You know, Guru collapses and 2,000 people are all tumbling down this. And suddenly, the night before, I had given a lecture on Francesco, and I had talked about his biographer, Nikos Kazantzakis, who had called him the last Christian, and what his calibration level was. I had been talking about that. And I saw, truly, I saw St. Francis. I saw him standing right there before me, and it was a transformation in my life. And my leg righted itself, and I stood up, and I started walking up those 3 flights of stairs, and suddenly I realized that my knee didn't hurt at all. And I started not just walking, but I started to run up the steps with this 200-pound man on my back at the age of 60. And I ran all the way up to the top, and my wife was up there at the top, and another 25 or 30 people who were there to see the place where St. Clair the last place where she had, before she had died. She was the first woman admitted into the Franciscan order by Francesco. And I saw, and I got to the top, and she said to me, my wife said to me, she said, "What are you doing?" She said, "You ran up those steps. You're not even out of breath. Everybody else is trying to catch their breath from walking, and you ran up here with John on your back? That's not possible." And I went out, and I walked over to that ledge, and I put my hands together, and I was giving thanks in that moment. And someone on a trip snapped that photograph, and we made it the cover, and it was calibrated at such a high level. And to this day, that was almost 3 years ago. That was on the feast day of St. Francis, the 4th of October. I play tennis on this. I run on this knee. I haven't worn a brace since. I can dance on it. I could just, it's like the knee has been totally, completely healed. And it all took place in an instant.
I have a very strong belief that everything that comes into your life is supposed to, and every condition of your life is part of the perfection of it, and that there's a blessing in all of it, and that there are no accidents, that it's a perfect, absolutely, totally perfect universe. Everybody that you meet for a reason. Everybody you're sitting next to, you're there for a reason. You can either take advantage of it or not. You have choices to make throughout it all. At the same moment, there's an opportunity in it, and I never look back with anything but gratitude for all that was handed to me, because I learned firsthand as a very young boy how to be self-reliant, how to take responsibility for myself, how not to blame other people for it, and to find something positive in it, and always did. Think of yourself as connected to and a part of it all, rather than someone who is being victimized or slowed down or abused by, or here it happens again. It's all part of the perfection of it all. That's a very nice, enlightening place to get to. It really slows you down. And it doesn't take away your ability to make choices. It takes away your wanting the world to be as you think it should be instead of as it is. That's what defines neurotic. That's what neurotic really means. To be wanting the world to be as you are rather than as it is. And for you to process it exactly the way it is.
And if you see everybody as a teacher, then you ask yourself, what do I have to learn here? And it's like in that second that you're just about to be angry and go around and maybe even have a head-on collision or whatever, or maybe nothing, but still in a hurry, maybe at that moment that person is there. That person is there to teach you to slow down a little bit.
Whenever you have a thought of, I don't have enough coming into my life, things aren't the way I would like them to be, I don't have enough money coming in, I don't have the right kind of relationship, that's all coming from a place of fear and a place of lack. When what I've learned to do is just go within and say, I am exactly the way I'm supposed to be, and everything that has ever shown up in my life showed up exactly on time, the same way the sun shows up on time every morning and the moon shows up every evening on time, that everything in this universe is absolutely perfect. There are no accidents in it, and the only choices that I have are how I'm going to process the things that have showed up in my life, the father that I had, the the resentments that I had with them. I no longer have to have those.
So the lowest stage of enlightenment is that stage where you look back on your life and you say, now I know why I had to be an alcoholic for those years. And now I know why I had to be in that relationship with my ex-wife. And now I know why I had to go through the bankruptcy. Or now I know why I had to create that cancer. Or that heart attack. Or whatever it was that taught me how to transcend that self-defeating behavior that I used to think I couldn't do anything about. You see? The second stage of enlightenment is when things like this are happening to you. You know there's a blessing in it. There's an opportunity in it while it's happening. You're smoking, and you know that there's something in this for me. You're going through a relationship difficulty, or you're having an accident, or you've gone through a series of illnesses, whatever it may be that seems to be a struggle for you in your life. While it's happening, you're looking constantly for what's in it for me? What can I get out of this? There's no mistakes out there. It's all being created for some reason. So that's the second stage. And that minimizes the suffering. Because you're looking for what's in it for you. How can I get something out of that? So that the person cutting you off, the way your children talk, whatever, you're not instantly threatened by that. You're constantly aware that these people are behaving that when there's something in this for me to learn. And I think I'll get it now. I think I'll get it now. Instead of waiting 6 years suffering through it and then seeing it. But there's a higher stage. It's the highest stage. In Zen they call it, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It's the same. The only difference is that you're doing it from a totally new perspective of thought. And this dimension, the highest stage, what enlightenment really is, it's when you're back home again. Instead of pulling away from yourself, you're toward yourself. And this is what it is. You are able to get out in front of it. Play it out in the dimension of thought. And decide for yourself whether it's even necessary to bring it into form.
You go from being the actor in your life who is being directed by the events, the circumstances, and the other people in your life, to being the director at the second stage. And in the third stage, you become the producer of your life.
Now, I'm in a 72-year-old body today. I remember being in a 20-year-old body, and in a 30-year-old body, and a 40-year-old body. And you can't find one cell of the body that I was in when I was 20 years old, 50 years ago. There's not one cell left. You go out there and I can't find it. It had all kinds of flowing stuff coming out of my head, and it's like it's gone. You're not doing anything. You're just being done. That's one of the things that the Tao says, that the Tao is just another term for God. The Tao does nothing. It leaves nothing undone. It leaves nothing undone. Makes the planets stay in alignment, the sun comes out, the oceans are filled, life goes on, fish reproduce themselves, roses show up, and there's nobody out there doing anything. It does nothing. So the question of who we are is can't be answered in physical terms, and it can't be answered with the senses. Your senses will lie to you. They will tell you something, and it's just not true, you know. I mean, our senses even tell us right now that we're sitting still when we're hurling through this ocean, right, at 20 knots. But we're also, so is the whole ocean hurling through space at something like 11 or 12,000 miles an hour. And it's also orbiting around the sun and turning on its axis. So it's turning, orbiting, and hurling all at the same moment. And your senses are saying, I'm just sitting here. You don't see with your eyes. You have to see through your eyes. The part of you that is processing what I'm saying here right now has no form to it.
has no beginning, it has no end. There's an infinite part of you. There's an invisible part of you. And until you're comfortable with it and know it and understand that it is the creator, the creation takes place through this creative process within you, called your mind, called your thoughts, called your spirit, called your soul. And one of the things that I have learned is that it's necessary to understand what your soul is to follow your excitement. Now hear this. Your excitement is who you are. Just let that in. We're getting very philosophical. I love it when we get like this, especially when I know we have lots of time, so we can just take it, just... Your excitement is who you are. You're not this body. It's the soul. It's this invisibleness. It's what causes you to feel passion. It's following your excitement. And it's something you can do at any time. And when you do, I guarantee you these two things. It will be effortless, and you will always be supported. It's always an effort when you are not following your excitement. What is it in here? What is that creative spark that just makes you want to do something, or you just feel drawn to do it? And the more you pay attention to this spark, this inner excitement, the more it will support you, and you'll find yourself doing amazing things, like really amazing things. Here's what Patanjali, the great 3rd century BC Indian scholar, great beautiful soul, who was the father of meditation, one who taught me the japa meditation and the I am meditation. He said, when you are inspired means in spirit. When you are inspired, that means when you are following your excitement. When you are inspired by some great project, some extraordinary project, all of your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction. And you find yourself in a new and a great and a wonderful world. And then he said, and this is what I mean by being effortless, he said, dormant forces, faculties and talents come alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be, or I say were ever taught that you could become, because you were not raised to believe in your divinity. You were raised, as Rumi said in that thing I read between the Chinese and the Byzantines, you were raised to believe in your limitations. And you don't know that within you, you have God. You are God. God is not an external concept. It's what the ego has taught us that it is. So that if you can answer the question, who am I? Who am I? And understand that who you are is a divine speck, if you will, a divine fragment of the universal consciousness. God's one and only voice's silence means that God is that which is indivisible. There is no place that God is not. And you can't divide God up and say that God is on this side or God is on that side. I've often said that God isn't doing anything different now than God was doing an hour ago or 100 years ago. And God isn't doing anything different now than he will be doing 1,000 years from now.
God is exclusively here and now, not elsewhere, not in heaven someplace apart from us, but here, now, and indivisible. And the word indivisible is very important, because that which is everywhere and cannot be separated or carved up is something that we have a great deal of difficulty in the world of the physical form experiencing and understanding. Because our world, the world of you listening here, is a world of dichotomies. It's a world of paradoxes. We divide everything up. And dichotomies are just our way of being. We divide everything in the world up. The only reason we know that something called darkness exists is because of light. If there was nothing called light, we wouldn't know anything called darkness. The only reason we have a concept called up is because we have something of its reverse called down. You've never seen a person with a front who doesn't have a back. You've never seen a person with an outside who doesn't have an inside. We divide everything. Everything is in the world of the divisible. In the Bhagavad Gita, it speaks about transcending the dichotomies, figuring out a way to get past the up-down, the male-female, the good-bad, the right-wrong, the old, the new, the alive and the dead. Everything has its dichotomy. You can always find its opposites. In fact, that's how the symbolism of language is created, through having opposites. We don't know about oneness in the physical world. Everything has its counterpart, its dichotomy, except for silence. Silence is the only experience that is the same as God. It is indivisible. You take silence, and we'll have some right now, and now let's just cut that in half. And what do we have? More silence. Let's take what we've cut in half and cut it in half again and again. And endlessly you attempt to divide into a dichotomy, silence, but you can never do it, because silence is indivisible. And silence is God's one and only voice. When you go into silence, you go into the place where you make conscious contact with God, whatever it is that God means to you. You make conscious contact with that omnipotent, omniscient force in the world, that omnipresence of God. And the reason I say that it's not crowded along the extra mile is because the mile that most people are on is a very, very noisy mile. And I encourage young people to become more comfortable with silence. We live in a world of bulldozers and leaf blowers and trucks that make endless amounts of noise and chatter. And constantly, I have a home, a place a retreat that I go to frequently on Maui. And oftentimes I will walk in the morning and they're in a big building project in Maui. And I'll go past one building after another and start to count the noisemakers, as all of these machines and all of these people who are trying to make the place look so pristine and so beautiful and so landscaped, instead of just letting it grow, just letting it be. Silence and God are one because you can't divide either one of them. Okay? So that going to silence as frequently as you can, and understanding that out of silence, everything is created. The words that you are listening to right now as I speak emerge from silence. That silence is the source. And it's the source that is what we want to make conscious contact with. Like the source of all light is the sun. And the only reason we know about light is because of something called darkness. But when you go to the source can't be divided.
Two quotes. The first from the Upanishads, quote, "Life in the world and life in the spirit are not incompatible," unquote. And from Søren Kierkegaard, the great Danish theologian, quote, "The majority of men live without being thoroughly conscious that they are spiritual beings," unquote. Heaven should not be thought of as a place you'll ultimately arrive at once you leave this earthly existence. Rather, it seems to me that you'd want to experience heaven right here on earth. As the title of this chapter suggests from a poem by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, earth itself is crammed with heaven. But do you see heaven in your daily life? Do you feel as if you're in a heavenly world? If the answer is no, then you're out of balance. You've probably made your physical world the primary focus of your life, with little or no attention given to the heavenly part of your earthly existence. What this imbalance looks like. When you place the larger part of your life energy on the material world, you're generally in a continual state of worry about your stuff, and you feel like you'll never get ahead in this game of life. Virtually all of your mental energy is focused on what you have or don't have. You assess your worth based on such material issues as what kind of automobile you drive or how fashionably you're dressed. You may even feel inferior because other people have more stuff. This imbalance between the spiritual and material world usually means that indebtedness is a way of life. You place a heavy emphasis on winning, becoming number one, and comparing yourself to others. A preoccupation with the material aspects of life leads to looking at life in a superficial way, where appearance is viewed as more important than substance. What others think is the most important measuring device, and how you stack up to externally imposed standards becomes all important. All of this anxiety that leads to stress is avoidable if you opt to balance the material-spiritual scale. Just a balance, an even split between these two aspects of yourself, is all you need to achieve. The title of this chapter, Earth's Crammed with Heaven, is meant to signify that it's all right here, right now, not in some other place in a distant future years from now or after the death of your physical self. Heaven is right here, now, at this time, when you find your balance point. Equalizing the balance scale. Heaven is a state of mind, not a location. Since spirit is everywhere and in everything, you can begin equalizing your material and spiritual life by making a conscious decision to look for the unfolding of spirit in everything and everyone that you encounter. I personally do this by making an effort to look upon my world as if I were observing it through lenses that filter out the form and all of the material aspects of what I'm seeing, and I can only view the spiritual energy that allows what I'm noticing to exist. Try putting on these imaginary magical lenses and see how different everything appears. The natural world is a pleasant place to begin this experiment. Nature. When you look at a tree without these imaginary form-fitting lenses, you may see branches, blossoms, leaves, and perhaps mangoes or plums. With your enchanting new lenses, the lines that form tree boundaries dissolve, and there's an energy vibrating so fast that it gives a whole new perspective of the tree. You see the spaces between the leaves, and notice the silence of the now defunct acorn or mango pit out of which the first sprout of creation emerged, jump-starting the whole process that eventually became the tree you're looking at. You see the continuation of this life-giving process residing deep within the tree that lets it sleep in the winter and blossom in the spring, or into infinity, or at least for the duration of its life. You realize that new mangoes are producing not only new fruit, but an infinity of mango trees as well. You see this life force in just one tree extending backward and forward in a never-ending stream of creation. Begin looking at all of nature with this new vision. Birds, ants, lakes, mountains, clouds, stars, all of it. Deepen your vision so that you no longer see only form and boundaries. Appreciate the miracle that is your environment. As you do so, you're getting into balance. People. These new lenses allow you to see everyone in a fresh perspective. You're no longer seeing tall and short, dark and light, male and female, old and young, beautiful and homely. Your lenses blur the lines that categorize people by cultural or religious differences, and you don't see others as only their attire or physical appearances or the language they speak. All appearances dissolve through filters in your lenses and your thoughts, so you now see the unfolding of the spiritual energy in every person you encounter. What you notice is pure love vibrating right before your eyes. You see kindness personified. You see and feel the same vulnerabilities in all others that you feel within yourself. You see enormous strands of peaceful, glimmering energy connecting each of us. Your new outlook invites you to playfully imagine that 2 people created you, and 4 people created the 2 people who created you, and 8 people created the 4 people who created the 2 people who created you. As we go back a few more generations to the time of Abraham Lincoln, there are 16,000 people you're related to who had to come together to create you. We can imagine going back to the time of Socrates and puzzle over the apparent math we come up with. Trillions of people were needed to create one of us, but trillions of people haven't even existed, so somehow, in some mathematically puzzling way, we're all related to each other. These are the kinds of fascinating connections that you can begin to observe with your imaginary lenses, transforming your thoughts. You discover that there's no one to judge, no one to hate, and no one to harm, because you see clearly that we're related. In fact, we're all one. From here, you can extend your perspective to include all of life. Events. Where you once viewed the comings and goings of people as pure happenstance in current time shaping the events of your life and the lives of everyone else, your new filtering lenses allow you to see how all of these things are connected energetically. Now you see an infinite network of laser-like energies emanating from the thoughts of everyone, blending the events in everyone's life in energetic perfection. You see people with very fast vibrations of energy matching up perfectly with the energy of the source of creation. You see how they attune with the all-creating, all-knowing source of life, and how events are perfectly attracted in a vibrational match. You also see what appears to be accidents, tragedies, and horrors, and how they, too, are vibrational matches that collide in what you've called mistakes, but are really the result of 2 or more energies meeting in a larger picture that you couldn't previously see. You witness the connection between the expectations of individuals and what they attract into their lives. With these amazing lenses, you note that all events and all accidental encounters are really incredibly compatible vibrational matches rather than randomly occurring situations. With this awareness, you're attaining a level of balance between spirit and form.
Non-erroneous zone people, which I now call NEZ, N-E-Z, are different from the normals in our world. While they look very much like everyone else, if you observe very closely, you'll note distinct qualities, none of which are racial, socioeconomic, or sexual, which disconnects them from so many other people. They do not fit neatly into any role definition, job descriptions, geographic patterns, educational levels, or financial statistics. There's a different quality about them, but the different part is not discernible by scanning the traditional external factors that typify many efforts at classifying people. They may be rich or poor, male or female, black or white, living anywhere, doing just about anything, and yet they are different in that they have no erroneous zones. How can you tell when you run into a NEZ person? Watch them. Listen to them. This is what you'll discover. First, and most obviously, you see a person who likes virtually everything about life. Yep, this is a liker. A person who is comfortable doing just about anything, and one who wastes no time in complaining or wishing that things were otherwise. They are enthusiastic about life, and they want all that they can get out of it. They like picnics, movies, books, sports, concerts, cities, farms, animals, mountains, and just about anything that you can include in your list. They just plain like. When you are around them, you'll note a startling absence of grumbling, moaning, or even passive sighing. If it rains, they like it. If it's hot, they dig it rather than croak about it. If they're in a traffic jam or at a party or all alone, they simply deal with what is there. No pretending to enjoy, but a sensible acceptance of what is, and an outlandish ability to delight in virtually everything. Ask them what they don't like, and they are hard-pressed to come up with an honest answer. They don't have sense enough to come in out of the rain. Why? Because they see rain as beautiful, thrilling, and something to experience. They like it. Slush doesn't send them into a fury. They observe it, splash around in it, and accept it as a part of what it means to be alive. Do they like cats? Yes. Bears? Yes. Worms? Yep. You'll be hard-pressed to come up with things, events, people, activities, or ideas that they dislike. They live, and while such annoyances as disease germs, droughts, mosquitoes, floods, and the like are not warmly embraced by NEZ people, they never spend any of their present moments complaining about them, or wishing that they weren't so. If situations need to be eradicated, then they will very likely work as eradicators, enjoying themselves and living all of their present moments. Try as you might, you'll have a tough time coming up with something they'll dislike doing. Truly, they are likers of life, and they wallow in all of it, getting out of it all that is possible for them. A Nez person is free from guilt and all of the attendant anxiety that goes with using up your present moments, being immobilized over past events. Certainly they can admit to making mistakes, and they can vow to avoid repeating certain behaviors that are counterproductive in any way. But they do not waste their time wishing that they hadn't done something, or being upset because they dislike something that they had done at an earlier moment in their life. Complete freedom from guilt will be the shocking behavior that you will observe in your Nez person. No lamenting the past, and no efforts to make others choose their own guilt by asking such inane questions as, "Why didn't you do it differently?" Or "Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" and so on. They seem to recognize that life lived through is just that, and no amount of feeling bad will alter the past. While they practice this non-guilt on themselves without any effort, because it is natural, they are remarkably free from even helping others to choose guilt for themselves, because they see with a third internal eye that feeling bad in the present moment only reinforces a poor self-image, and that learning from the past is a far superior tact over remonstrating about the past. You'll never see them manipulating others by telling them how bad they've been, nor will you be able to manipulate them with the same tactics. They won't get angry at you. They'll simply ignore it and see you as someone who is a guilt dispenser. Rather than being upset at you, they'll go away, or they'll change the subject. Hence, you won't even recognize that the very strategy that works so beautifully on most people has failed dismally on your Nez friend. Rather than smear themselves and others with guilt, they just unceremoniously pass when it comes along. Similarly, your Nez chap will be a non-worrier. You'll soon note that circumstances that drive many people to frenzy will be mildly internalized by a Nez person. They are not planners and putters away for the future. They refuse to worry when you do, and they keep themselves unmucked up by the accompanying anxiety that goes with worry. You can't drive him or her crazy with worry. They don't know how to do it. Almost as if it is just not a part of their makeup. Not necessarily calm at all moments, but just unwilling to spend any present moments disasterizing about things in the future over which they have no control. They are very present moment oriented, and they have an internal signal that seems to remind them that all worrying must take place now in the present moment, and that it is a foolish way to go about living one's current life. With no present moments ever available for awfulizing, they just never seem to get around to the business of worry that so occupies most lives. Your Nez person is able to live now rather than in the past or the future. They are unthreatened by the unknown, and they seek out experiences that are new, untried, and unfamiliar to them. They love ambiguous things rather than being upset by them. They love the now in virtually all settings, being aware that this is all that they have. They don't plan for a future event and let long periods of inactivity elapse as they await a payoff. The moments between events are just as livable as those taken up by the events themselves, and they have that uncanny ability to get every pleasure out of their daily lives. They are not postponers saving for a rainy day, and while their culture admonishes such behavior, they are unthreatened by reproachment. They gather in their happiness now, and when a future now arrives, they gather in that one as well. Strange, but this Nez individual is always enjoying simply because they see the folly of waiting to enjoy. This is not some special credo that they've adopted. It is the natural way of living, very much like that of any child or all animals. Grabbing heavy doses of present moment fulfillment, while most normals spend their lives waiting for their payoffs and never being able to seize them. These people are strikingly independent people. They are out of the nest. And while they have a strong love and devotion for family, they see independence as far superior to dependence in all relationships.
Being peace.
peace isn't something that you ultimately receive when you slow down the pace of your life. Peace is what you're capable of being and bringing to every encounter and event in the waking moments of your life. Most of us are waging a nonstop internal mental skirmish with everyone we encounter. Being peaceful is an inner attitude that you can enjoy when you've learned to silence your incessant inner dialogue. Being peaceful isn't dependent on what your surroundings look like. It seldom has anything to do with what the people around you think, say, or do. A noiseless environment isn't a requirement. St. Francis's famous prayer states it better than I can. Make me an instrument of thy peace. In other words, St. Francis wasn't asking God to provide him with peace. He was asking for guidance to be more like the peace he trusted was his source. Being peace is different from looking for peace. This principle isn't about merely choosing tranquil thoughts when you're feeling frayed and anxious. I suggest picturing a container deep within yourself out of which all of your thoughts flow. Inside of this container, at its very center, imagine a candle flame. You need to make a commitment that this flame in the center of the container, holding all of your thoughts, will never, ever even flicker, though the very worst may go before you. This is your container of peace, and only peaceful thoughts can fuel this burning candle. You don't need to change your thoughts as much as you need to learn to be an energy of peace lighting the way and attracting serene, harmonious thoughts and beings. In this way, you'll become a being of peace. Obviously, you take this inner receptacle with you wherever you go. When people attempt to put some kind of pressure on you, when you feel overwhelmed, or when situations arise that previously incited your distress or bellicosity, you can immediately turn to your inner candle flame of peace and see how to keep your light glowing. This is being the peace that you wish for yourself. This is offering a matching vibration to your desire to be a tranquil and amicable being rather than a person suffering from the disease of trying to make life go faster. You've already seen the results of that folly, and you notice the symptoms of stress in virtually everyone you meet. As a being of peace, you make a huge impact on those around you. It's almost impossible to be totally stressed out in the presence of someone who has opted to be peace. Peace is a higher and faster energy. When you're being peace, just your presence alone will often nullify the uneasiness and the tension in those around you. In fact, this state causes pheromones of measurable energy to emanate from you. They affect others who become more peaceful without even being aware of the transformation taking place. The secret of this principle for restoring balance to your life is be the peace and harmony you desire. You cannot get it from anything or anyone else. So you're not ready to take Nisargadatta's profound advice and just be? Then work at becoming that being with the inner light of a steady candle flame. Whenever you think something, you must go to this container, select a thought, and send it out into the world. Using this metaphor, the real issue isn't about simply selecting positive, loving thoughts and having your world shift back into balance. The real issue is what's in the container. That is, what's in the heart reservoir you have inside of you to give to others. This container within is connected to an endless supply of love. You need only turn your thoughts to that source to be filled with love. Love for yourself, love for the world, love for life, love for all others, and most significantly, love for your source of being. Then this is all that you'll have available to give away, and consequently, all that returns to you. It's been said that the difference between all of us living at ordinary levels of human consciousness and those we call saints is that they never forget God even for a single moment. They're cheerful when life is difficult, patient when others are impatient, and loving when others respond with hatred. Why? Because of that container. Ordinary people have a container out of which they pluck loving thoughts in certain circumstances. The saint has an internal vessel that contains nothing else out of which and into which love flows freely. So rather than working on simply changing your thoughts in order to become more peaceful and loving, why not shoot for the moon and think like the saint that you are? Focus on that container within. When you continually say, Holy Spirit, guide me now, you'll see your container overflowing with so many loving thoughts that it's impossible for negativity in any form to alter the balance within. We seem to live in a totally out-of-balance world where our desires for feeling peaceful are challenged by the myriad non-peaceful energies that are considered newsworthy. But we do have a choice in this matter. And we can choose to realign ourselves energetically with our desire to live in this world peacefully, regardless of what's going on around us, and in spite of the non-peaceful energy we're so often subjected to. Sogyal Rinpoche observed that, quote,
two people have been living in you all of your life. One is the ego, garrulous, demanding, hysterical, calculating. The other is the hidden spiritual being whose still voice of wisdom you have only rarely heard or attended to, unquote. I'm inviting you to restore some balance by looking for heaven everywhere and listening and attending to that hidden spiritual being that is within you at all times, begging you to pay it more heed.
Where there is injury, pardon. This is about healing, whether it's physical or emotional. Bringing a sense of pardon to the presence of injury. I've just produced a tape with Hay House called The Secrets of Your Own Healing Power, in an address I gave to a chiropractic convention a while back. And the secrets of your own healing power are basically to understand, well, here's a letter that was written by a woman. Her name is Gladys McGarry, and she wrote a book called The Physician Within You. Wonderful book. She's a medical doctor. And she relates a conversation with her son Carl, who had just finished his internship and was specializing in orthopedic surgery. He told his mother about his fears about having people's lives in his own hands, and she wrote him this letter. She said, Carl, as a surgeon, you may pull an incision together and suture it well, but you cannot make it heal. If you think you are the one who does the healing, you have a right to be scared. But if you understand that you are a channel through which healing moves, and that you are contacting the healing force within your patients, you have nothing to fear. You will have awakened the physician within them and sent them on their way to heal themselves. Healing, to me, is bringing the presence of a faster and a higher energy to the presence of this thing we call injury or disease, which is really the reaction of our bodies to our minds. And our minds have, again, the illusion that we're separate from God, and therefore our bodies are commanded by a ego mind rather than a sacred mind. And that when we move ourselves, and this is one of the biggest questions that you had in all the questions I read last night and this morning, it was about, what about these people who get diseases? What about children who have diseases? What about people who get AIDS? And all of these kinds of things, and how can you ask them to take responsibility, and so on. And it's not an issue that is an easy one to deal with because it's very emotionally entrenched. But just like starvation is part of the perfection of this universe that I don't like or agree with or understand, and so I put my attention on my desire to end it. And I know that that comes from God as well. I feel the same way about disease. I think that some children incarnate to be here for a certain amount of time. And just like my father may have shown up here to teach me compassion and forgiveness by being the kind of person he was, I think a child might show up in a body that has AIDS or in an injury or whatever. Again, if you understand and believe and know that there's a perfection to this universe and there's a force operating that holds it all together, and that we have an infinite amount of time to work this whole thing out, we begin to no longer tell ourselves that death and these kinds of things that are taking place that are so painful for us are not a part of the perfection of it all. They are. And when you begin to bring pardon to the presence of injury, what you also do is you bring a higher consciousness. And when you bring a higher consciousness, you begin to detach yourself from this body and realize that that's not who you are. I am not this thing that I occupy. And once you're detached from it, like a Helen Keller wrote some of the most powerful and beautiful and inspirational material with a body that hardly worked at all. And when a Lance Armstrong, who is diagnosed with testicular cancer, has 2 tumors the size of grapefruit in his stomach and in his lungs, and 14 the size of golf balls in his lung areas, and 2 the size of oranges in his brain, and is told to die. And his wife brings a bike and puts it at the foot of his bed, and somehow something magical, because he was told not only will you not walk again, you won't live and breathe again. He not only went past it, transcended it by looking at that bike that his wife placed at the foot of his bed, but he went to the most grueling test of physical endurance there is on the planet and won the Tour de France. After that diagnosis and that experience, the Tour de France takes 22 days. It's 2,000 plus miles through the Pyrenees, highest mountain peaks, lowest mountain peaks, every single day riding. The most grueling test of physical endurance there is. And not only did he win it once, but the next year, just to emphasize that this wasn't some fluke, he did it again, twice. He's only the second American ever to win the thing. And he did it 2 years in a row after that cancer. And he wrote his autobiography, and it's called It's Not About the Bike. I recommend you read it. He brought something to the presence of this, and a miracle took place. And the law that has ever allowed any miracle to take place in the history of humanity, it's still on the books. It hasn't been repealed. It's there. Where there is injury, let me bring pardon.
Become conscious of precisely how you are using the words I am in your daily conversations. If whatever follows these 2 words is not fully aligned with your perception of how the creative source of the universe would be speaking, then make the correction on the spot. Say to yourself, I am the resurrection and the life in thought and feeling. According to the I Am Discourses of Saint Germain, quote, it immediately turns all the energy of your being to the center in the brain, which is the source of your being. You cannot overestimate the power in this statement. There is no limit to what you can do with it. It was the statement that Jesus used most in his most difficult trials, unquote. Secondly, notice how those around you, particularly family and close friends, use and misuse the inherent power of I am in their lives. Observe that many people say, I am weak, I am poor, I am depressed, I am sick, sad, afraid, I am unlucky, and so on. And they continue to attract that into their life. If they are willing to listen and change, gently remind them that there's no way to attract what they prefer without acknowledging and applying the active presence of God in them. No arguments, just gentle reminders. By observing and teaching the I am awareness, you will become more aligned with your highest self. And 3, remind yourself often that you have to send the old, unworkable fabrications about your highest self out of your life forever. Be able to say, I am God with pride and assurance that you are not being blasphemous or inappropriate. Believing in that ego-driven idea of a guide as a malevolent super being who plays favorites and is filled with rage if you displease him is akin to believing in the Easter Bunny and praying to that rabbit to solve your problems. Keep uppermost in your thoughts the words of Jesus. God is love, and that you are proud to be that all-powerful God yourself. You are God, the I am that I am. Know it and stay in harmony with this divine I am presence. Perhaps now it doesn't sound so foreign to you to assert your divine nature. You might just want to start by being careful not to use the words I am when describing yourself in any way that isn't congruent with your newly awakened, God-realized self. The lines of the 40th verse of the Tao Te Ching, quote, "Being is born of non-being," unquote. This was Lao Tzu's observation 2,500 years ago. The visible world of being originates in non-being. Some 500 years later, Jesus would tell his followers, "It is the Spirit who gives life." John 6:63. I could go on through all of the great spiritual traditions and offer you quote upon quote that states that it is in the invisible, formless realm that the originating spark of life begins. Today, the world of quantum physics confirms that the universe is made of formless, spiritual energy, and that particles, that is, things, do not originate from particles themselves. Everything springs from something that is akin to your imagination. You can't touch or taste or see or hear or smell it. It has no boundaries. You can't prove it with mathematical formulas or scientific verification, yet we all know that it exists. These invisible thoughts that you have, these ideas that continue to percolate within you, these fanciful imaginings that are always with you, are beyond the scope of science to prove or disprove. It is up to you to channel and use this magnificent endowment to work in the creation of all that you choose to place in that imagination. Taking charge of your imagination. My favorite definition of success, which I've cited on numerous occasions, was offered by Henry David Thoreau in the middle 19th century at Walden Pond. Quote, "If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams, and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours." I've italicized two words in Thoreau's definition of success: dreams and imagined. What Thoreau is saying to us is so important to you today. Be willing to dream and imagine yourself becoming all that you wish to be. If you live from those imaginings, the universe will align with you in bringing all that you wish for, even more than you imagined when you were living at an ordinary level of consciousness, or what Thoreau called common hours. Keep in mind this basic axiom: if all that now exists was once imagined, then what you want to exist for you in the future must now be imagined. You'll see, as you listen throughout these foundations for fulfilling your wishes, that using your imagination involves more intensity on your part than just imagining an occasional wishful thought. You must first unlearn some of the ways that you've been misusing or squandering the capacity your imagination has for providing you with an unlimited ability to manifest all that you desire. Thoreau called it advancing confidently in the direction of your own dreams. Unfortunately, some of us have learned to do the opposite with our imagination, and instead regularly use it to develop mental habits of advancing in precisely the reverse direction of our highest dreams for ourselves. Recall that I am God doesn't refer to your body in any way. It refers to the birthless, deathless, changeless spirit that remains in all the changing forms your body takes every moment of your temporary life here on earth.